It's always heartbreaking when a watch brand has to close up shop, but there's so many great historical brands out there that aren't here today but are still worth mentioning and taking a look at. So join me on this journey of watch brands that aren't here anymore but are worth remembering. It's very similar to a restaurant, I feel, because a restaurant opens up and, people try it out, but it's very much the opinion of the reviewers of that first realm. Me and you could start a watch company today. The designs might look great, but if a couple people wear our watches and maybe like the strap falls off or like some quality issues that maybe it's our first run, we use this guy, we use the wrong guy, even the first little impact changes the whole trajectory of the brand. For watches specifically, World War I and World War II really play a big part. I think Elgin is a great example of that. If you ever went on eBay and just typed in, watch or pocket watch, you've seen an Elgin watch. Elgin was an American watchmaker that was around since 1800s. Again, in the days of pocket watches when we all needed to be on time for our trains, and again, we're not in these huge cities with big clocks. We need to know, what time it is. Elgin was one of the premier makers of watches in America, along with Hamilton was around, the Waterbury Watch Company. There's so many great brands that were American-made watches because the need was there, right? You needed to know what time it was, and Elgin just, when the wars happened, one, workers had to go to fight the wars. Two, a lot of these specialists and machinists had to go into gun making facilities or weapon making facilities or that type of situation. And then you also have the fact that you can get watches outside of the US, so people didn't need to go to Elgin. So a lot of brands and companies, not only in the watchmaking world, but just in all industries in general, had to focus on, during war times on wartime activities, and that just really took away from Elgin and kind of sucked away a lot of their air. A lot of these Swiss brands who during the war were just making money. So they're making money to market, they're making money to produce more watches, so they just become this great kind of big force that easily will be able to go and send watches to, retailers in different stores and send product across, from Switzerland to the US, while Elgin was just, still trying to do its thing but couldn't get that market share back. Minerva is another great brand not many people know about. They used to make nice watches of all complications. They got bought by Montblanc in I think early 2000s or so, and now they produce a lot of really nice pieces for the Montblanc, the Nicholas Roussek line, all Minerva pieces. A lot of the in-house things that's coming from Montblanc right now is from Minerva. They were really bought because they're such a great manufacturing house to kind of help Montblanc go, and that's what happens a lot. You have a great historical or great manufacturing facility like Minerva, who used to make nice watches, but again, like the consumers didn't gravitate to it, especially after a certain age level. It's not something, many people watch this video don't even know what Minerva is, but it powers a lot of really cool watches. So you pair that with a company like Montblanc, who just started into watchmaking in 2006 or so. They need really quality movements, who want a heritage. So that's a beautiful partnership because it helps a brand that really doesn't have a foothold in watchmaking, and helps a brand that has a great brand equity and just wants to enter in that watchmaking space seriously. So brands like Minerva, Universal Genevieve, they come to mind. So Universal Geneva is an interesting story in watchmaking because they come from Geneva, right? Which is very important because this is where some of the greatest watch brands came out. Audemars Piguet, Geneva, Patek Philippe, Geneva, many other great high-end watch brands and collaborative efforts were housed in Geneva. So Universal Genevieve is a really interesting brand, most notably because they kind of pioneered chronographs. In 1917, they made the first chronograph. They were, really on the cutting edge of tool watches. So as the world moved from pocket watches over to wrist watches and the functionality of wrist watches, they were one of the brands to say, hey, we'll make a chronograph for pilots, and we'll put big, brigade numerals on it, and we'll make, different type of watches for kind of different experience, and even nice, cool ladies' watches. But chronographs were really their thing, and then compacts and put dates on there. So they're actually really powerhouse brand, and they competed with all the big boys up until the Quartz Crisis. You go into the Quartz Crisis and something interesting happens here. This brand that's been really, good in Switzerland, really good around the world, they say, let's take a bet on quartz. So they start making quartz movement. At the same time as taking a bet on quartz, they also said, let's focus our energy to selling watches in Asia. So what happens here is they focus all this energy on Quartz. Their consumer really didn't look to them for Quartz watches, and they're also pivoting themselves away from the normal consumer of Universal Geneve, trying to capture the Asian and the international market. While brands like Omega and Longines, focus on their branding, focusing on mechanical watches and keeping their brand strong, Universal Geneve kind of went the Quartz route. It didn't really go that right for them, and then by really focusing on going to Asia, they kind of lost their holding in the Western world, where other brands kind of really became strong, and then Universal Geneve just kind of slowly faded away. At the beginning, I think what you have to unpack there is that Quartz was a little bit more of an expensive movement. So Quartz watches at the very, very beginning were more expensive than mechanical watches. So it kind of fit if you were somebody who were making watches, oh, let's go into Quartz. They're priced a little bit above what we do, or they're priced very, very similar. And then as technology gets better, Quartz watches, the prices goes way, way down until you have a $40 Swatch watch. So it kind of changes your whole economics if you've invested a lot into making this brand. I think as well as shifting their marketing focus outside of the Western world, putting them in the pocket of Asia, which is a great buyer, but didn't prop them up enough to keep. You need the whole. Especially at that time, you need the whole world looking at your product to really keep going, keep making it happen. I often think of the Gerald Genta watch line, which got bought by Bulgari and then got folded into Daniel Roth watch line, got bought by Bulgari as well. And they both kind of turned into what like the Bulgari Octos are now. The Gerald Genta watch line was just so unique and so creative, and he played a lot with like different hands and styles and cases, and it was like he was having a lot of fun with that brand. And while the DNA does exist within the Bulgari line, I'd like to see the Gerald Genta watches keep being produced and keep having their own independent flair and kind of have their own fun thing, because he is such a revolutionary designer. And it'd be nice to see a brand like that just house a bunch of cool independent newer watch designers, kind of like what MB&F does, and just create like cool little watches that come out of nowhere. That'd have been cool. But that's definitely a brand that you can still get those watches. Remember, they were still making Gerald Genta branded watches in the 2000s, so you can still find a relatively modern watch, just cool. Not many people will know what it looks like. It has a lot of cool different functions. I've been lucky to buy be offered a lot of different Gerald Genta watches, and it's a deep catalog of very cool watches. So that's definitely a brand that I think people should look into as a brand that's kind of gone away, but still you can find really like cool pieces there that are modern and not super vintage or old or anything like that. Quarterbird is an interesting example. It's a watch brand that like nobody really knows about. Started like 1790s, to really rich heritage. They used to do movements for Rolex. They did a nice jumping hour movement. I think IWC took a hold of that as well. And they're one of those movements that during the Quartz Crisis, or one of their brands I should say, that during the Quartz Crisis just couldn't handle the fray of what's going on. You got to remember, during the Quartz Crisis, a lot of brands were just kind of stuck in their own paths, and they were just doing, it's just like how the automotive industry was in the US. You're kind of stuck doing the same old thing, and then all of a sudden this outside force comes, where it takes away your consumer base. And so it's something that you're not even thinking about. It's not even in your realm. You're just thinking about producing watches the way you've always produced it, the way my dad produced it, the way his dad produced it. I'm just in the line of watchmaking heritage, and all of a sudden there's this disruptive force. Quartz Crisis hit, lost consumers, and it couldn't find a way to hold on. And as money dries up, it's hard to keep a business going afloat. So I think the brands that are still up top, the reason why they're still there is they protected their identity. They stay close to what they do. Take Rolex really quickly. They make nice sports watches, nice watches for everyday consumer. Yes, right now their price point is at a higher price point than like an average watch. But remember, they started out as just making quality, solid watches that worked, that felt good, that did the right thing, and they slowly over time made little changes. They never made a big pivot from what they do, and so they always kept their consumer base there. If you want to talk about your favorite watch brand that isn't here anymore, you can always DM me on Instagram or leave a comment below. If you like my video, please let me know. Feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. Definitely check out my other videos and many more coming soon.